That makes sense. You're shot in the back of the head, kind of. Yeah. By the way, if you go to the Smithsonian, the main headquarters, the castle in D.C., on the first floor, they have Lincoln's death mask. You know, he's dead, so somebody makes like a, you ever heard of those? They put like a mask on the face.
Yeah, 'cause it's scary to look at.
Oh, it's just, that's what the dead body's face looked like at the time. And it's pretty accurate because basically it's just clay that's
Oh,
made.
wait, what? So when you died back then, they just put some like plaster on your face?
Well, just to preserve it, but not everybody.
Huh.
And then did they normally bury the mask with the person, or did they take it off and keep it?
They kept it.
I die.
And in fact, you can get copies of it.
Just kidding. That's gross. That was gross.
Friend of mine, Rick Goodfellow, who owns KLEF, the 98.1 classical music station. If you visit his radio broadcasting office, he has Beethoven's death mask up on the wall.
Like the actual one?
No, it would be a copy. So,
Guy's voice is weird.
So, John Stuart Mill grew up in a house that was, his father was James Mill, and James Mill was a utilitarian and a follower of Jeremy Bentham.
This is the guy who preserved himself.
Yes.
Jeremy Bentham. Yeah.
So they had some interesting problems. The father wanted his son to have the best education, I think all of his children, but he really worked hard on John Stuart Mill and gave him a personal education at home, so he was homeschooled. They also did not believe in the religion, the mandatory religion, which that caused problems because at the time, if you were going to go to the university or get a job in any of the state-sponsored things, you had to be an official member of the Anglican Church that had sworn to the principles of the church. And so not being members and not swearing to those principles meant that he couldn't go to university, couldn't go to get jobs in state-sponsored things, etc. But it actually worked out pretty well for John because he ended up getting a job at the same place where his dad worked, which was the India Company. That was basically the company that had all the business relationships with the import-export, and really they were ruling India. Remember, that was part of the British Empire at the time. And there were 3 different provinces that they were ruling in India. And so John Stuart Mill ended up going right from basically getting a home education from his dad into work at the India Company. Is it the East India Company? I don't know if they called it the East India Company or not. But in any case, so he would walk to the building every morning, work morning, go to the 3rd floor where he had an office that had 3 windows overlooking the road, and he would have breakfast at 10 o'clock of egg, toast, well, not toast, I don't know if they had toast, but bread and butter and tea. So that's kind of interesting. When I read that, I immediately felt the need to get up, and I made 2 boiled eggs and I had bread and butter and tea. Was that weird or what? I don't know. So that was kind of cool. It was a good, yeah, it was actually more lunch, like, you know, at the time. But, so, and what he mostly did was write dispatches and read the dispatches that came in and write ones going out. He was like in his late teens to start with, in 1922. How old would that have made him? 1922, or 1822, not 1922, 1822. Oh, how the heck? No, that couldn't be. 1806? Well, 22. Okay, so 22, how old would he be then? 6 from 22 would be 16? 16 years old, right?
Yes.
And he was paid £100 a year for this position. I don't know what that means. I don't know whether that was good or not, but it was good enough that he could survive, like he was set. So he didn't have to work otherwise, and that was a concern because the other possibilities he could have had were being a journalist, because you didn't have to be a member of the church to be a journalist. But the thing about that is being a journalist meant you were living off of how much you made by writing, and his father had tried doing that and discovered that that's a really awful way to try it, because he frequently came close to bankruptcy and stuff. Not good. He couldn't teach. I forget, there was another way. Oh, he could also end up going into law. And he almost went into law. In fact, he studied law for quite a while he was a young man, but ended up not going into law. So those, because you could be a member of parliament without being a member of the church. So that was what he was thinking of doing. And by the way, eventually he will be a member of parliament. He will be elected by, he only stays one term, but he was elected. By the way, he's, since he's a follower of Jeremy Bentham, keep in mind that Jeremy Bentham was a utilitarian. So the main principle of utility is actually 3, really, but the one is that the highest principle is the greatest good for the greatest number. The greatest good for the greatest number, which that could be very confusing because it doesn't tell you what the greatest good is, and it also makes it difficult for you to figure out how different people rate. Because if you're thinking the greatest good for the greatest number, we should not be living here, we should not be using the energy we use because that's not good for the rest of the world. I mean, reading Steven Pinker's book, Enlightenment Now, he says that globalization, having trade throughout the world, enabled a lot of the poorer nations, the third world nations, to catch up. So that a lot of the really, really poor people in the world ended up making a heck of a lot more money. And so it's really improved their quality of life. But, by the way, the lower middle class and the middle class in America declined because it was their jobs that went overseas that enabled those people to make less money, but nonetheless way more money. Right? They make less money than the Americans had been making, right? But they make way more money than they had been making before, right? So when you look at the curves, globally, more people are doing better than ever before. But by the way, these Americans are losing out because they've lost jobs in Tennessee, right? So not good for the politicians in Tennessee to say, oh, it's bad for you guys, but it's actually better for more, the greatest good for the greatest number. So it's good that you're out of work. No, that wouldn't be good for those politicians. They wouldn't get elected. Trump obviously is kind of in league sort of with that, make America great again. Screw the world, right? We need our jobs back, right? But Steven Pinker, psychology professor in Harvard, could care less about that. Says actually, for the greater number, this was a better thing. Sorry about that, guys. But actually, he'll point out, your quality of life is still way better than the people whose quality of life has improved drastically because of that. Because they're still, basically, making $1 a day and living, a very impoverished life by comparison. Whereas we have, of course, social welfare nets that can protect you. If you don't use them because you're too proud to do that and you don't go out and ask for those benefits, well, that's your own fault, right? That's Steven Pinker. Not me, by the way. I'm keeping out of this. But, so if you're thinking the utilitarian principle, the greater good for the greater number, how do you determine which way things should go in a situation like that? Should you be concerned about the whole world at the expense of your fellow American citizens? Plus you point out, hey, as a matter of fact, it's way cheaper for you to go shop at Walmart because you're getting way cheaper product. It's good quality stuff, but it's way cheaper than it would be if you had to go to a store that sold only American-made products. Which is part of the argument today. They're saying if more of the jobs come back, those products will cost you more, so you as a consumer will have to pay more for those than you're paying right now.
Yeah. It's kind of ironic because it seems like a lot of the people who are on the people are taking our job side of things are the same people who don't even care to shop local anyway, so it's kind of ironic.
Well, I remember when Walmart in Eagle River was built, Donna was thrilled.
Well, it's cheap. I mean, come on, everyone can appreciate cheap stuff, right? I mean, even if it's at the expense of,
And we never shopped at the little small stores here.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It was way too expensive.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
So we would always go downtown anyway and then when they built the Sam's Club, we were all thrilled with that.
Right.
But even so, we would go to we can shop at the Commissary and the PX. I pronounce it Commissary, so we go there to be miserable with the other. It's actually a very nice place with lots of good products for not discounted prices, but it's
What is it?
The
Commissary on post. I'm retired Army,
Oh,
so
right. Okay, yeah.
I'm part of the military family. I can go and
Mm-hmm.
shop there at the PX. And we do. But we shop at Cars. We're concerned about the local community and supporting our stores here because we want the survival of that. That's why every once in a while I buy books at Barnes and Nobles, even though it's really cheaper, to probably go with Amazon for most things.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a used book instead of a new one.
But we have used bookstores. Yeah, the
They
bookshelf.
mostly have novels, though.
Good luck finding anything.
Yeah,
in
don't
there.
try. But Tidal Wave is really good.
Tidal Wave.
And it's right next to.
Yeah, Tidal Wave is
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
good. I
which
like
is
Tidal Wave a lot.
I've only been to Tidal Wave once since it's changed hands, though, to the,
Oh, they can't.
how they've kind of
Yeah, they have that
downsized
crazy-
a little. And
Did you go to any of those? Because they had a bag of books for $1 and then they ended up
yeah,
just
I didn't
being,
find
free.
anything.
Yeah, me neither. It was all
Besides, I could do that
No.
myself at home. Do you guys want any books? I could bring in books.
Yeah, I know, right?
I always want books, but I have too many of them. I told my
That's me as well.
grandparents that I liked old books, and now they just give me all the books they don't want anymore, and
That happened to me with like vinyl records. I just have like a plethora, and they're all just like country Christmas albums. I'm like, I don't know what to do with the keys.
Christmas music once a year, that's handy.
Yeah.
Country Christmas music.
Country, yeah.
So let me pull up notes that I have on John Stuart Mill, so that I could do a good job for you and make sure you're. I'll go this way. Oh, rats. That's I've changed things, so now I don't have. Where's that? So he follows. Can you see that? Small and big enough? Yes. So follows Bentham. And so we have what's called hedonistic calculus. Hedonism is pleasure. A single hedon is a measurement of pleasure.
What? Like scientifically, or is this more like?
Well, I don't know how you could have possibly measured it in Jeremy Bentham's day, but he figured out that what you need to do is have like a scientific calculus, a hedonistic calculus. We've got to make a decision here. Well, if we do this, we'll have 6 hedons of pleasure. If we do this, we'll have 8. So we should do the one with 8.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It is. It is. Especially when, how the heck did they measure what a hedon was?
Have you ever heard of the Lazy Lizard Hedonist Club? No?
Hedonistic club?
It's called the Lazy Lizard Hedonist Club. Oh.
Lazy Lizard Hedonist Club?
Yeah.
No. Is that at the school?
No. This is just like a whole bunch of hippies, but it was pretty, I don't know, whenever I think of hedonism, I think of that. It's just like this group of like these people in their 40s who just like do psychedelic drugs and go on walks. I don't know.
Well, the trouble is when you look at what a hedon is, yeah, I think it's, no. That's just weird.
Is a hedon, could it also be a person? Like, or no, that'd be a hedonist, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
How is it related to the word heathen, if at all?
Heathen
Yeah.
is someone who's not a member of the Christian faith.
Right, yeah. But it's
Or
those
if
two
you're
words
Islamic, I guess it would be the translation of someone who's,
Right. Right.
not Islamic.
Right. Are those words aren't related at all?
No.
No. Okay.
No. No, but literally, an individual is supposed to be hedonist. So it's a unit of pleasure used to theoretically weigh people's happiness. But yeah, how do you do that? So I have, like, if I were trying to decide, should I stay at home and read Hegel out in the sun on the back deck? If I do that, then I would have 20 hedons of pleasure, because that would be a fun way to spend the afternoon. But my wife, DJ, maybe no hedons, maybe she, well, if, it was that nice a day, she would read out on the deck too. But, and all the kids, it's only 4. That would be, how much, I don't know. But, so, only for sure 20 hedons of pleasure with that choice. If instead we go to the fair, state fair, right, then I'll enjoy the fair, because I can bring, haggle with me if I want, and I can read on the bench. My favorite thing, though, at the fair is to, well, there's two things I like to do. One, I like to go into the animal exhibits, because I love the smell of that derriere. That's a really bad joke.
Yeah, I know.
And then the other thing I love to do is sit on the bench so that I can watch the people on the rubber band thingy.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it's amazing that people will like pay $25 to get on that thing, and then it flings them up into the air, and everything in their bodies tell them, I'm going to die, and I'm alive.
Yeah, it's pretty fun though.
And then they want to pay $25 again.
Have you ever done that? Ever?
No.
Oh, I've only done it once, but it is pretty fun.
No, I'm not going to do it. But I will watch people do it, because I think that's hilarious. Right? But so I'll have a few hedons of pleasure if we go. Although I might also subtract 5, because that means I'm going to have to drive out there, plus the park, you know the traffic, etc., parking. So I'm going to take -5 off. So I'll end up with 5 hedons of pleasure for the deal, right? But Donna will enjoy 10 hedons worth, because she loves to go and see the quilt show. So that's cool for her, right? The kids will each enjoy it. So altogether, right, that's 50, right? Plus 5, so 55. So if I'm looking at should we go to the fair or stay home, pretty easy to figure out. We should go to the fair. So that's pretty easy. So, but I mean, the thing is, I'm guesstimating
Exactly. You don't know.
on any of this. I don't really know. If we get to the point where we can actually measure the electrical stimuli or stimulation in a person, and we are actually getting close to that, you can see all the sparklies in the brain through a different kind of MRI or something, right? So you can say, oh, this was clearly more fun for that person than this, or this was scarier, or this was, whatever. So if we do that, we might be able to measure that. But the thing is, you're also thinking in terms of long term, aren't we? Because if you jump off a cliff, you will have the same enjoyment for a while that you have while you're on that rubber band thingy. The only thing is the splat on the end, and for the benefit of, well, you don't have to spend the $25. You could do that for free. But the enjoyment you have on the way down is not sufficient to make up for the result of that. And if everyone can predict that the splat at the end would be like your last little bit of pleasure, if you have lots more fair attendance, you're only 20 or something, 16, somewhere, I don't know how old anybody is, but how many more times are you going to get to ride on that rubber band thingy if you live, right? 40 more times or something, until, whatever, you decide, oh, I'm not going to ride that thing anymore. It's too, it'll screw up my pacemaker or something, right? So you stop going. Obviously, living enables us to enjoy life. I mean, there's the classic argument that you don't have to worry about death because while you're alive, you're not dead. And once you're dead, you no longer are, right? So you don't have to worry about death. The worrying about death is like the worst part of it. That's Epicurus argues that, right? But actually, we can project that 20 years from now, you'll be having a lot of fun. But if you're dead, you won't. So, by the way, I think the contemplating suicide is usually the argument that I will be better off dead than alive because of all the pain I'm having. But that doesn't really calculate out, because I think if you add up, the lack of all the future pleasure that you will have as a result of being dead, it works out that even though you're having less because of the suffering that you're experiencing, you're still having some. So it turns out you'll still have a lot more pleasure living than dying.
But what if there's an act, the opposite of a hedon, like a negative?
Good question.
Because then you could calculate
I have
my
never.
life sucks. I live in an impoverished country. My kids are dead. My wife is dead. I'm doing awful. In a few years, it's only going to be getting worse because of the increasing political climate. Blah blah blah.
So people have asked this?
A dollar. Which
Yeah.
means, what's dollarism then?
Dolor means pain in Spanish. Maybe it does in Latin too.
Yeah, which is why you should not name your daughter Dolores. Unless she's Umbridge.
Oh, yeah. She has a lot of Latin.
Yeah, all the Harry Potter names are significant. You know that, right?
All I knew about them is that everyone who's not a main character does not have a quote-unquote normal name. That bothered me.
None of
What
them?
about Ginny? And Fred and George?
Fred and George are really generic American names,
Those are
and then you get
normal
like
names.
Remus Lupin.
But
Why can't we have cool names for everyone?
Yeah, well, Lupin means wolf, right? I forget what Remus means, but there's an actual mythological association there. Yeah. Rubius means red. Albus means white.
Really?
Sirius Black is black. So everyone kind of picks on the story where you mix red, black, and white with lead, and it turns into gold. So it's the alchemist
Oh.
story. And at the very end, by the way, of book 7, when Voldemort dies, the sun is supposed to come up, and it's supposed to give a golden glow to the area where Harry
Oh, wow.
is. So Harry's the lead, and so it's not real lead being turned into gold, although strictly speaking, if you're an atomist, you should be able to just rearrange the particles so that you get whatever you want. But it's metaphorically transforming the lead of the character to the gold of a role model now. So, he's learned his lessons, etc., and achieved his character development or whatever. But yeah, there's all kinds of metaphorical, and of course, Dolores Umbridge is anger, so she's pain and suffering magnified. It's her character. But I've never heard anyone ask that before, and yet it's so obvious. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
But how come I've never heard them doing a dolor calculus and to measure it. What are the suffering? That seems so obvious that they should have been asking.
Yeah, because then it would kind of cancel out the hedons, the hedons.
Right. In fact, I sort of subtracted them myself, when I
Exactly.
thinking, but I didn't think of calling them a non-hedon. But yeah, there's an element of suffering as well, and we should kind of calculate both of those. I don't remember them ever doing that. Interesting. But so that's the idea of the hedonistic calculus. Yes, try to make it very scientific. But on the other hand, remember Hegel has introduced a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is towards a concept of evolving. And along with that comes the recognition that ethics should evolve. We should have moral progress. Right? And how are we going to achieve that moral progress? We need to apply science to it. Have I ever showed you Sam Harris's TED Talk? So he's a hedonist or a utilitarian.
I'm going to speak today about the relationship between science and human values. Now, it's generally understood that questions of morality, questions of good and evil and right and wrong, are questions about which science officially has no opinion.